Hi, I'm Brandon Bowers, pastor of New Life Church, located in Locust, North Carolina. Now, I wanted to say thanks for stopping by and checking out our YouTube channel. I hope that today's message is both encouraging and challenging to you in your walk with Christ. If you're in our area sometime, we would love to have you come check out one of our services, each and every Sunday at 8:45, 10:15, and 11:45. We'd love to have you come out, and I hope that you enjoy today's message.
All right, well, good to see you guys. Got a great crowd. So it seems like those who signed up and signed our commitment card last week, well, you're taking that commitment seriously, right? So I had a great service, first service, and this is awesome to see all you guys here. And looking forward to a third service. So if like the crowd of people, if that bothers you, if you got some kind of phobia, then start coming to the third, open up a few more seats for guests to come into this service, and that would help us out tremendously. It would be absolute, and it would be an encouragement to those in third services as well. So, but I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for being here. It's been sort of a messy kind of weekend. Just one of those, I'm a kind of guy, I like to get out on the weekends. On Saturday, that's my thing where I'm washing the vehicles, I'm straightening up and cleaning up in the yard, doing a little work and that kind of thing. That's just sort of my outlet. If you know where I live and have been by my house, you know that I'm a little bit, let's say, anal about my yard. That's why the stripes are in it. You ride by, it looks like a baseball field. That's just my thing, right? That's my outlet. I don't have a lot of hobbies. I don't get out and do a lot of stuff. But that's the way that I sort of relieve stress. I can say for an hour. See, like a lot of people, they don't want to get out in the yard, don't want to do that kind of work, and don't want to mow the grass. It's boring. But for me, it's a stress reliever. It's like an uninterrupted hour of just thinking time. I can think, I can pray, I can try the best that I can be to be creative. That's why sometimes I'll do the stripes the other way or, whatever. That's just my thing. I'm not a flower person. We got a few shrubs, a few trees, and that kind of thing. So, like, if you're riding by our house and you see that, Pastor's got some nice flowers out. Jessica did that. I'm not fooling with that stuff. That doesn't interest me at all. But I've been reading here lately about some flowers and plants that do interest me a little bit, and they fall under the category of carnivorous plants. You ever heard of anything like that? These are plants that devour flesh and meat. And I'm like, yes, that's a man's flower right there. I want some of those. They would dissolve and digest, insects, and in rare cases, small mammals and amphibians. I'm thinking, that's awesome. How much more awesome could you be? I'm sitting here dreaming of some kind of gnarly toothed plant that I could put out in my shrubs that would devour all of the stray cats in the neighborhood. That would be great. Give me about 12 of those, right? Set them all around my house. That would be awesome. But I haven't yet found any like that. There's about 600, I believe it's 600 carnivorous type plants out there. Most famous, obviously, being the Venus flytrap. You probably saw that, maybe had one of those as a kid and looked at it in science class. But one that really interests me is called the pitcher plant. It's sort of an hourglass shape, multicolored, looks like a flower, but it looks like a water pitcher. And it secretes this sweet nectar that sort of flows all the way to the base of the plant where the ground is, where the ants and the insects and all that can sort of get a taste, and they'll climb their way up to the top, to the rim, where it's usually just wet with nectar. But on the inside, it's what's called the pitfall. On the inside is where the mother lode is. That's where all the sugar, that's where the good stuff is. But the problem is, when an insect or whatever climbs its way up and enters into the pitfall, it's real waxy and smooth and slick in there. It has downward growing fibers, so that something that goes in slides to the bottom, has trouble getting back out. And of course, they think they're getting the mother lode of nectar, but down in the bottom, that's where all those flesh-devouring enzymes are. And listen, an ant, a beetle, or whatever it is that you are, once you get on the inside, it's a bad day. It's not going to work out good for you. And I know you're probably thinking that I'm on some kind of rabbit trail tangent, like what the heck does this have to do anything with church and my spirituality and walk with Jesus? I'll get there. Trust me, eventually. But we started a series back a few weeks ago, New Year, New Me. And if you'll look on the front of your notes, you'll see that by today's title, it has everything to do with a pitcher plant, because I want to talk to you today about winning over temptation. Winning over temptation. How can in the new year, the new me, win against this thing called temptation? See, temptation is defined as the state of being allured or enticed. Typically, we think about it in terms of to something bad, to something evil, or to something immoral. And so with that in mind, and now you can sort of see the tying in of how that ties in with this picture print. You know, temptation is the nectar that sort of draws us in and entices us towards the pitfall. And now with that said, what is it that tempts you? You don't have to answer out loud. You might embarrass yourself. But what is it? Just think about that for a moment. What entices you? What is it that draws or catches your attention, that is alluring to you, that seems almost irresistible? What is it that is such a craving for you that, you know, it's almost as if you have to have it? It's sort of a guilty pleasure, but yet it's not right, because it leaves behind this aftertaste of guilt and regret. Sort of lets you know that, man, that wasn't the best choice that I could make. And I don't know what it might be. Custard-filled donuts, hey, I love those. Man, put one of those on the table and all bets are off, right? Ice cream, you know, what is your guilty pleasure? It may be something food-oriented. It may be something a little more serious. You know, we usually think about temptations along the lines of drugs and alcohol and sex and, you know, other habits that we need to break in our life. It could be that, you know, your temptation is the latest, greatest smartphone, the new gadgets, whatever it is that just come out on the market. You have to have it. You can't seem to resist it. Or for a lot of students, the temptation is just simply to be accepted. I want to know that everybody likes me, that everybody approves of me, and I'm willing to do just about anything necessary to make sure that I gain the acceptance and the approval of other people, my peers. See, I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what your temptation might be. I just know you have one. We all have a temptation. And the thing that I know about all temptations is that they're dangerous, destructive, and at times it can feel like a fight to the death to defeat it and to win. And so that's what I want us to walk away here today with something in our hands, something we can hang on to, knowing that, listen, I can beat this thing. I can win over temptation. Now, we could go through all the Bible. There's plenty of places that we could look at and plenty of stories we could come from on the topic of temptation. I want to take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. There's 2 verses we're going to look at today. And I believe in these 2 verses, Paul gives us 4 strategies to winning over temptation. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, he starts out by giving us an example from the people of Israel. You remember they wandered throughout the desert and the wilderness for like 40 years. It was sort of a testing time for them, primarily because of their disobedience. Is why it took so long. It was a time where they experienced temptation. And it was also a time where they experienced giving in and the consequences that followed. Paul describes to us, starting around verse 10, that these people were tempted by idolatry at one point. They gave in. They fell into the trap. And consequences ensued. People died. There was a time when they were tempted with sexual immorality. They gave in. And it says that in one day, 23,000 people lost their lives because of it. Later on, they experienced the temptation. They were tempted to test God, to put Him sort of in a corner and try to manipulate Him. And because of that, snakes were sent through the camp. People were bitten. A lot of people died. That's the whole story of the bronze serpent. Moses held up the bronze serpent. He said, you look to this and you'll live. Later on, they were tempted to grumble and to complain and, to whine about their conditions, and that's exactly what they did. They grumbled, they complained, they whined, and God sent a death angel through the camp. And he cleaned out all the grumbling and all the whining and all the complaining. There are some serious consequences when we fall into this thing called temptation. And so Paul uses the people of Israel as an example and as a warning to us on the topic. And then in verse 12, and this is the two verses, 12 and 13, that we're going to spend our time looking at because he speaks directly to temptation. And as I said, I think he gives us 4 strategies of how to win over temptation. So look with me, if you found 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12 and 13. Paul says, if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you're tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. So if you're following along with me, you got your notes out and you're ready to go. 4 strategies to winning over temptation. Number 1, admit that you're tempted. Just simply admit it. That, hey, this is my issue. This is the battle that I have to fight. So you go back just a few minutes ago to when I asked you, what is it that tempts you? What allures you? What entices you? What's your guilty pleasure? I don't care how you categorize it, what you call it. What is it? All right? What was your response? Some of you may have thought, I don't know. I mean, nothing comes to mind immediately, nothing specific. Others of you, man, as soon as I said it, something came to mind. Because you fight it. You battle this on a regular basis. It's always in front of you. Seems like it's always there. It's important that we know. It's important that we have it settled in our mind what it is that tempts us, what we have to fight against. Because the battle against temptation always begins, and listen to this, is either won or lost in the mind. That's where it starts, in the mind. And that's why in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, the Bible says, be careful how you think. Not how you act, not how you behave. Be careful how you think, because your life is shaped by your thoughts. Paul's telling us that it all starts in the mind. Winning over temptation begins right here. Now go back to verse 12. Paul says, if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. He's given us a very clear warning against the kind of thinking that would say, temptation's not an issue for me. Temptation's not a problem that I have to fight. I'm not tempted by really anything. I'm sort of immune to it, or I'm not affected by it. I'm not that gullible. I don't have chinks in my armor, whatever it is. Paul said, be careful about that. I'm warning you about that kind of thinking. Because, see, the biggest liar in the world says, I'm not tempted. Nothing tempts me. We're all tempted. Let's just be honest about that. I'm tempted. You're tempted. Even Jesus was tempted. Go back and read Luke chapter 4. It's very plain. And Paul even said later in Scripture that Jesus was tempted in every way that we're tempted. It's a natural part of life and living in this world. And someone to say and to suggest that I'm not tempted, I don't have an issue in anywhere or any area in my life with temptation is in denial. And what denial will get you is walking into a tempting situation with all of your defenses down. You have no way to guard yourself. And so we need to raise the defenses. We need to raise our level of alertness and at least be willing to say, this is something that could potentially be a problem in my life. It's the first and foremost strategic move against defeating and winning over temptation. Just admit that you're tempted. Number 2, avoid tempting situations. Once you've admitted it, then you begin to take steps to avoid those types of situations. Now you're thinking, man, I was really expecting something much more profound than all of this. But it's really simple. I know the battle against temptation is difficult, and as I said, it can feel as if it's a fight to the death, but winning is very simple. Winning is very straightforward. Admit it and then seek to avoid it. Take a different route. Put up some guardrails. Protect yourself. Paul said here, if you look back at verse 12, after he cautioned us about how we think, he said, verse 12, be careful that you don't fall. Be careful. Pay attention. Watch what you're doing. I've got 2 kids. One's a 6-year-old. One's about to be 3 years old here in just a couple weeks. I bet you I say be careful like 10,000 times a day. Right? I mean, those of you with small children, you understand. Because mine, they love to climb. I got 2 climbers. If it is elevated in any way, they want to scale the top, right? They're climbing up on stools and on chairs, on tables, on countertops, on top of the refrigerator. I mean, it just keeps going. I'm thinking, well, if they could just climb straight up the wall to the ceiling, they'd do it. If I get a ladder out, I'm washing the truck or I'm doing some repairs at the house, all I have to do is turn around. And then one of them's going to be up the top of the ladder. Hey, Daddy, look at me. I'm like, be careful. Like, watch what you're doing. Pay attention. If I've got tools out and I'm doing things, they want to be right there in it because they want to do what Dad's doing. They want to help. I get that. They're curious. They're just trying to be helpful. But they don't understand many times the dangers. They don't see it. And so I find myself over and over and over reminding them, be careful. Be careful. Watch what you're doing. Pay attention. Because if you don't, bad things can happen. You're going to fall. You're going to get hurt. You're going to cut yourself. You're going to shoot yourself with that nail gun. You know what I mean? Anything, right? It can happen. And this is God's way of saying to us through Paul, watch what you're doing. Be careful. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of the influences that you allow in your life because these are the ways that temptation sort of leaks in. Be aware of your temptation and avoid situations that would sort of give it influence in your life. Let's just think about a couple scenarios. You may be a married person. You're working in the corporate world or wherever it could be, and you just notice that when you get around a particular person, that it feels different. I'm not saying you're out looking to have an affair or anything like that, but maybe you get a little butterfly in your stomach. All right, you know that in a way I'm sort of attracted to that person. Or they've made it aware that they are to you. And it's like, I have no intentions here. I'm not taking this where it shouldn't go. I mean, I'm right in my brain about this, but it's a temptation. Is it wrong to be tempted? Well, if you say yes, then, we got an issue with Jesus. Because he was tempted. And it says he was tempted in every way that I'm tempted. Well, I know how I'm tempted. All right? So I just have to be aware of that and then begin to avoid that situation. I need to put up some guardrails. I need to prepare for that because, it may be someone that you can't avoid altogether. But you need to start putting up some barriers, some protections. If you can avoid it altogether, I'd say do that. Let's speak to the people in here that's not married. Say you're just dating. All right, now this could be anywhere from middle school, and if you're dating in middle school, I don't know why. Like, what are your parents, stupid or something? But, I don't think you're supposed to say stupid. At least that's what my girls say. Not supposed to say that. But, middle school, high school, even adults. Come on, let's just be real. Even adults who are dating. If you aren't married, there's temptations. You might say, I'm an adult. Well, then you ought to know better. We all experience these temptations when dating. And the Bible says we need to guard ourselves against those things. Listen, if you know that that's a temptation, maybe to push the envelope when you're with your significant other, to let things go a little too far, well, listen, start putting up some protection. Don't put yourself in those situations that you would then let your guard down. Let's be smart about some things. It may be that you're someone who's a recovering addict of some kind. I'm trying to quit those, custard-filled donuts, but every time I leave work, I go by, the hot now sign is on. It's like they put it on a timer. They know I'm coming by at 4 o'clock, and bam, there it is, right glaring in my eyes. And my car sort of steers in there. Hey, I know how you feel. Right? Or you go right by the creamery, on the way home, and you just, it's almost irresistible. Or, hey, something a little more serious. I've had a problem with alcohol in my life, and something I've tried to quit time and time again. It just keeps creeping back up. It just keeps becoming more and more of a problem. There's probably some patterns in your life. There's probably some things in your routine that you could change to avoid that temptation. And if it's going by a certain place, if you have a certain stop, if you got a certain store, like that's your go-to place where you're going to make a purchase or whatever it is, or if there's a certain set of friends that you hang around, it seems like when you get around them, that's when you fall into this temptation, well, then you got to start avoiding that. Get a new set of friends. Take a different route home from work, even if it means going out of your way. You see, for many of us, the problem is not that, hey, temptation is just a natural part of life and it's just a regular part of living this life. That's not really the issue. Sometimes temptation is a part of our life unnecessarily. We're all going to experience temptations, but sometimes we experience it when it's not necessary. And what I mean by that is we put ourselves in situations where we will then be tempted that should never happen. We let our defenses down. We let our guards down. And we invite it in through the choices that we make, the company that we keep, and the circumstances we allow ourselves to be in. Listen to what James, he's the half-brother of Jesus, he said this about temptation in James chapter 1, verse 14. Each one is tempted when by his own evil desire he's dragged away and enticed. We are tempted when by our own evil desire, it's us that's the problem. It's our choices. When by our own evil desire we're dragged away and enticed. So if we're going to win this battle, it begins by admitting in what ways, in what areas am I tempted? How can I avoid those situations? What are some steps that I need to start taking today to maneuver around this, to prepare for it, whatever that means? And then number 3, because you might be thinking, well, I've tried all of that. I believe that in most cases, if we would just implement those 2 strategies, most temptations would be dealt with. We wouldn't hear from those things ever again. But I understand that there are times when we find we're trying, we know this is a temptation, we've tried to implement ways around it to prepare for it or to avoid it, and it's still there. I still find that this is a struggle in my life. This is a potential downfall in my life. So what do I need to do now? Number 3, it's simply, Paul said this in verse 13, to accept your temptation as being common. Let me read this for you. Chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you're tempted, He'll also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. Accept your temptation as common. When we're dealing with something that seems to, we struggle to get rid of it, and it's always there, and we're taking efforts and making efforts to guard ourselves against it, but it's still sort of a problem. That's when many times we can be convinced that we're the only one experiencing it. Like, this problem must be unique to me. Nobody else knows the fight that I'm in. And Paul says, it's not unique to you. You need to understand that this is a common problem. You see, temptation is playing on our sort of natural desire to be different, to be special, to be unique. We all like that. And in some way, we want to be unique. We want to be set apart from the crowd. All right, most of us, if you look back in life, that was just a phase. Some people get stuck in it, and like for the rest of their life, they're trying to be unique and different. You'll notice it if you have teenagers, those who are in high school, middle school. One day they're going to hit this phase. Like they're going to flip the switch on you. They will leave in the morning normal, and they will come back after school that later that day weird. Just weird. I mean, start dressing crazy. You know, maybe they get in this all black phase. You know, that was sort of big when I was in high school. Just you wear pants. You know, these tight black pants, black shoes, black shirt, painting their nails black, putting the the eye stuff around their eyes that was black, and they were guys. Like, are you serious right now? Just weird. It's all effort to be different, to be unique. And see, I had that kind of phase. I'm going to rat Jessica out. She had that phase. I'm going to tell you hers first, because then, mine won't sound so bad. I met Jessica when she was a senior in high school. She was 17 years old. She'd just about to graduate high school. And she admitted this because, listen, if I would have met her during this time period, we probably wouldn't have gotten married because it was just weird. But she was like, I went through this punk kind of phase where she said she would wear to school in public these like plastic type pants, skin tight pants. Sort of like if you were to take a shower curtain and just wrap it, or saran wrap yourself or whatever. I'm like, that's out there. That's crazy. Too much for me. Me, when I was probably sophomore in high school, I just decided one day, I thought, every day for the school year, I'm going to wear the same, not different pairs, but the same cut-off camo cargo shorts. Every day for the entire school year. You're like, well, what'd you do in the winter? I put long johns on, under them, full length, right? So I got these dirty cut-off camos with white long johns, right? You're thinking, well, you wouldn't have married her, right? Yeah. Maybe that just means we were made for each other, right? It's just a match made in heaven. Two weirdos coming together. But we all have those kinds of phases, right? I mean, I had people after the first service tell me, man, you ought to see what I did when I was coming through school or whatever. And when you look back on those phases and those times in your life, it's funny, right? We all get a good laugh out of it. But let's get serious for a moment. It's not so funny when we take that same attitude and that same approach to temptation. It's not so funny when we try to tell ourselves, well, this problem is unique to me, and there's nobody on earth who's fighting the same battle that I'm fighting. Listen, we tell ourselves that. We may have heard someone else say that about their situation. When nobody knows what I'm going through, nobody understands what's happening in my life and how much of a problem this is for me. People just don't get it. Well, yeah, other people might have this problem, that problem, but it's not as bad as mine. Or they don't have it as tough as I do. You see, we're trying to say, I'm unique in a way. I'm different. I come from a different mold. No, you don't. No, that's a lie. Those are excuses that end up getting us in a situation that we feel that we can't get out of. And so we give in. And Paul said, the truth of it is you're not unique. The thing that you're experiencing, the temptation that you're fighting against, it's common. It's common. No temptation has seized you. Nothing has come upon you. You're not encountering anything except what is common. Common. It means the same, if you want to describe it, the same demons that you fight, well, there's somebody else fighting the same ones. And if we were to all be honest here, and again, I'm not asking for anybody to stand up and confess anything this morning, but if we were to do that, what you think is so common and so unique to you, it might surprise you how many more people in this very room are in the same battle, fighting the very same thing. So don't spend your time sort of dumping on yourself. I know you feel like you're a horrible person because there's nobody fighting and going through this like I am. You just feel terrible. There's no need for that. But there's also no need for trying to convince yourself that there's something different about you that no one else has to experience. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. If you're going to win, this is a problem that I have. This is a temptation of mine. This is something that entices me. And here are the steps that I need to begin taking to avoid this type of situation. Because I'm not the only one. Other people have to deal with this. Other people have already beaten this. So that means I can too. And then finally, Paul says, if you want to win over temptation, you need to, number 4, adhere to God's way out. Adhere to God's way out. I want you to notice the last portion, the last half of verse 13, because this is one of those verses where sometimes we conveniently forget that part. When we're in the heat of the moment, we forget this part. Because Paul reminds us that God is faithful. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. That very first part, man, I love. If I could just camp out there for like ever. God is faithful. God is faithful. When I am faithless, when I am unfaithful, when I am the biggest screw up in the world, God is faithful. But what is He faithful to? Paul said He is faithful, number 1, to not allowing me to be in a situation that I can't handle, in a tempting situation that I can't get out of. He is faithful to not allow me to be tempted at a level or to an extent that I cannot withstand it, endure it, and overcome it. He's not going to allow it to happen. The second thing, He is always faithful to provide a way out. Every single time. And that's something that we just need to let sink into our brains today and take that with us and remember from here on to the rest of our life, there is always a way out. God is faithful. He will always provide a way out. The next time you're tempted, be it 30 minutes from now, this week, 3 months from now, 30 years from now, I want you to hear what I'm saying to you. There's always a way out. Let those words echo in your mind. There's always a way out. God will not leave you without an escape because God is faithful. Do you believe that? Do you really believe it? God is faithful. There will always be a way out. And so all of these excuses that we drum up and that we try to deliver to God for the reason that we gave in, they're no longer valid. The devil made me do it. No, he didn't. Listen, I hate the devil, like more than anybody. But sometimes he gets the blame for things he didn't do. He is a tempter. He wants to see you and me fall. But he can't make me do anything. And he can't make you do anything. Because God always provides a way out. He can set the stage. He can lay everything out beautifully. But you and I have to choose. See, the most radical thing that I could tell you, the most life-transforming thing that I could tell you today is this. There's always a way out, but you and I have to choose. That's it. That's the key to overcoming temptation. There's always a way out, but you have to choose that way. Well, I didn't see a way out. Because you weren't looking. I said, I'm just going to be honest with you. There have been plenty of times in my life, I look back and I see it very clearly right now. I felt in the moment. I convinced myself in the moment, well, I couldn't find a way out. Like I was trapped. I was surrounded. The reason for it was because I wasn't looking. I wasn't looking for the way out. If I noticed it, I ignored it. I didn't take it. That's why I failed. Well, I couldn't help myself. That's such a lie. Because that goes absolutely against what God's Word just said. He says, I'm not going to put you in a situation. I'm not going to allow temptation to come into your life that would be at such a level that you can't help yourself. It's just not so. It's not even possible because God is faithful. But nobody understands. Listen. Today is the day that we stop making excuses. If in the new year there's going to be a new me, there's going to be a new you, then we stop with the excuses and we start winning over temptation. We admit what areas in our life, what areas in this life and in this world are enticing to me. I'm going to acknowledge those things. They're common. Other people are fighting it. Other people are dealing with it. Now, what do I need to do to avoid it? Because I want to be one of the winners. I want to be one of those who defeat this thing. We're going to be the ones, the new year, the new me is going to be that one who's always looking for God's way out because I know it's there. I know it's there because He's faithful.